Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast, and it is Behind Enemy Lines. We will have a special guest here on in just a second who covers the Houston Cougars football program. A lot to discuss, including, well, a couple of familiar faces for the Red Raiders and much, much more. If you haven't already, be sure to like the video. Let's go get those comments going as well. I saw somebody in there. We got old Texas Tech man. He's commenting already. Get your score predictions in there and much more, your questions about the Houston Cougars, and like the video. Let's get this thing started before he jumps in here. During today's live, ask your questions about Houston. Obviously, the comment section will be for that, but I plan on asking him quite a bit about how Donovan Smith has looked, right? I mean, I think Texas Tech fans are very interested in Donovan Smith due to that connection. And, well, rightfully so, right? Played high school football in Lubbock due to his dad being the RB coach at Texas Tech. We obviously know what he did during his time in Lubbock, really saved Texas Tech's season in certain ways last year, allowed that time to get there for Tyler Shuck to go 4-0. And, hey, it's just really cool to see Donovan have this opportunity, albeit this weekend against Texas Tech. Really rooting for Donovan outside of games. I guess he plays for the Red Raiders, right? So we'll discuss him. We'll also discuss Dana Holgerson. And honestly, it feels like the vibes are just down right now for everybody. I mean, just the vibes are down. Everybody in the comments is very low right now. We need to boost this up. We'll have some fun here on today's live. And again, Dayon Dunlap of Pawd. Well, we'll have Pawd Slama Jama. I thought that was actually a really fun name right there. I don't think Texas Tech has anything like it. So we'll have him on here in a couple of minutes. He said he'll join around 6:05 and 6:10. But let's get the chat going. We'll answer some questions real quick. We got Salt of the Earth. What's up, RC? Appreciate you being here tonight. We got Roy. Let's go. There we go, Roy. We appreciate you tuning in. We also got Salt of the Earth saying Tech a 4-win team in 2023. Man, if they don't beat Houston, it might be less than that. And I'm not trying to push the vibes down low. We're trying to keep the vibes high here, though. Salt of the Earth, come on. This from Roy. Is he still Donovan like he was for us? Yeah, dude. We're going to have to talk about Donovan because it's one of those things where, man, I'm telling you what, I'm kind of nervous about Donovan this week from the sheer standpoint of, listen, I know a lot of people have a lot of criticism of him in terms of, he doesn't do this well or he doesn't do that well. But, like, when it comes down to it, Donovan does one thing really, really well, and he impacts games on the ground, right? But if you look at what he's done at Houston so far, I mean, he's done a pretty good job through the air too. Again, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but against that Texas Tech pass rush that we all know that's been non-existent this year, I mean, maybe he does some things. Because remember last year, and we'll talk about this with Dayon here in a little bit, one of my interesting things to watch this weekend is if Texas Tech can't get pressure on Donovan Smith, this game could get ugly for the Red Raiders, who are 10-point favorites last I checked. I believe the line has fluctuated anywhere between 8.5 and 10, depending on where you're looking at the sports books. But, like, if Donovan Smith has time to throw and then really create things, I mean, shoot, Donovan's got an advantage. And you just mentioned it, Salt of the Earth, 100% agree. He knows this defense, right? He practiced against it every day for a few years, right? Well, at least some of the guys on there. At least for 1 year, though, last year. And so it's going to be really interesting to me to see Donovan come in here. And also, there's going to be massive chips on certain people's shoulders, right? Like Alex Hogan. I know a lot of people don't remember that name, a corner for Texas Tech. He transferred down to Houston like a lot of guys did. You remember Deshaun Henry, he was down there. Also a few other guys as well. But, you know, when you look at Texas Tech, right, like there's obviously guys from Houston as well. So there's a lot of chips on the shoulder here. And let's welcome in Dayon real quick, man. Here we go. I appreciate you hopping on, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, RC. How about yourself? Thank you for having me.
Man, I will be fully transparent with you. The vibes are down here in Raiderland. The vibes are down. But hopefully, you know, we can talk some good football tonight and keep those vibes going right. First and foremost, before we jump into anything, I want to give you the opportunity to tell the people who you are. Also, Pawd Slama Jama. That is a dope name. Gotta give props where it's due, and just kind of what you do for them, and also what you do, just I guess in your day to day.
Well, I'm half of the co-host for Pawd Slama Jama. We also have a post-game show, Let's Raise Cougs, that we do post-game for Houston football, men's football and basketball. But outside of that, of course, I graduated from the University of Houston. My co-host is Andy Yanez. For our post-game show, we have two other co-hosts. But outside of that, I'm a news reporter for a local TV station in Joplin, Missouri. So I'm fresh off work, fresh on the station on here with URC. But outside of that, I love sports, man. I think before I got into news, I was doing play-by-play and color commentary for basketball, for Houston women's basketball, and a couple other colleges in the Houston area. But just wanted to kind of versify my resume. And I really like news. It's a challenge, but it's nothing like sports, man. I love sports and I love football. But how about you? Tell me a little bit more about your podcast.
Yeah, man. So we do daily videos here about Texas Tech, good and bad. Right now, like I mentioned, vibes are down. Vibes are extremely down. But yeah, no, I've done this for about a year now. Obviously, I have a lot of experience calling games like you did as well in college out there at Tech. Did the student radio station. I was sports director out there for a while, actually marrying my, I guess you would call it college sweetheart. We met at the radio station, and we're actually getting married here in a couple of weeks. And so like did that for a couple of years in terms of calling the games, got to cover Patrick Mahomes for a season. Slight flex.
You know Chaz Wright? You know Chaz Wright?
Yeah.
That's my coworker.
There you go. Hey, tell him that you were on here tonight. Chaz is a great dude. Yeah, Chaz is a great dude. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Joplin. I didn't realize that's where you were located. I actually grew up in Rogers, Arkansas, so not too far from there.
Yeah.
Y'all probably transition down to Arkansas and cover some stuff down there too. So yeah, that's awesome. I love the full circle type stuff going on here. But I know people want to hear about Houston, and there's a couple names that we're going to have to talk about tonight just for the connection aspect of things. Yeah. And I think we should just jump right into it because Donovan Smith, there is a love-hate relationship with him in this Tech fan base that it's kind of complicated to talk about because I feel like you are either all in on Donovan Smith. Like there's still people to this day that think Donovan Smith should be the starting quarterback for Texas Tech, right? There's also other people that think Donovan Smith should not be starting. He is a backup, like gadget type quarterback, which is, in my opinion, I'm far more to the first former side that we mentioned. But tell me early on, because again, you've watched every snap that Donovan has had this season. What has stood out most to you about Donovan Smith and this Dana Holgerson offense?
So far, what stood out to me is his poise. I think he's really poised, not only in the pocket, but just has a poised presence about himself. And so I kind of, before the season started, I watched like 3 or 4 of his Texas Tech games and kind of watched his strengths, went back and rewatched the dreadful game where he was with you guys and we played you last year and you guys beat us. And so, but that's what stood out to me, his poise, especially in the pocket. I think this is the first time, of course, in his college career that he's the guy, the starter, and it's his team. And so kind of watching him last week the week before last, his starting center, Jack Freeman, came out and said to the press, I want Donovan to be more of a vocal leader. And it was a kind of a story before the season even started on how him and Jack really didn't have a relationship to start, and it kind of naturally formed. So I think that's more credit to Donovan and his maturity to not come in and be like, I'm the guy, I'm the guy, and allow the relationship to organically form and allow his leadership style and his connection with his teammates to organically form. In regards to his play, I think it's been inconsistent from his time at Tech, just kind of watching it. And then with Houston, I wouldn't say it's been inconsistent because he's been consistent with his play. He just haven't, I would say, took a major step to be like, okay, he's not only the guy, he's a guy, he's him. And so outside of that, I think he has the tools, of course, to get the job done, especially in the Big 12. But for different circumstances, drop passes and maybe O-line, play calling, just different things. I think him getting more comfortable in the system, his best football is probably ahead of him in this season.
Yeah, that is a one of those statements you just said in there about drop passes. That's a trigger warning type moment for Texas Tech fans right now too, from the standpoint of there's been a lot of them this year. There's been a lot of them, but yeah, I think that honestly inconsistency kind of. And again, this isn't throwing shade at Donovan. I think it's just he doesn't have a lot of experience actually
Mhm.
playing, consistently week in and week out, right? Like this is his first opportunity,
Yeah.
as you mentioned. So inconsistency was the word that kind of stood out in the limited film that I've seen. But also, just from my perspective, again, very limited sample size last year, and then watching what I've seen this year, I think he's almost night and day as a passer,
Mhm.
in the sense of his confidence, right? Like he's confident to throw the football. Last
Yeah.
year, he would hold on to the ball for dear life. And then basically at the end of it, he's like, I'm more athletic than you. I'm just going to go run you over or just simply run past you, right? And he would have a couple of good throws, and not to pour salt in the wound. Last year against Houston, he had a couple. But, I think when you look at what Donovan Smith does well, he's obviously got the big arm. He's
Right.
that guy that's the prototypical, if you put him in play action passing situations where he can just chunk it deep and trust a receiver. And then if it's not there, hey, I'm going to take off and run. I think he's great. And to have a guy like Dana running the offense for him that I think really can utilize his skill set where, I think, again, he is not Clayton Tune. I don't think anybody's trying to say that.
Yeah.
But I think you can use him in some similar ways
I
to
agree.
Tune. And I think that's what Dana really liked about him. And I mean, just watching the three wide receivers that he's, I guess, hyper targeting would probably be the right word.
Yeah.
Every one of them has 20 plus catches, or at least 20 catches, I should say. Is that kind of the offense right now where looking at it again, balanced, not running the ball too well? It looks like in terms of, I think it's under 4 yards a carry last I checked. But is it one of those things where it feels like, hey, they use the run game just to create a little bit more space for these three guys in the offense that are really just taking all of the target pie, I guess you would call it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment because Dana is really, really, although it's a air raid foundation of an offense, he really predicates on time of possession, time of possession, and as well as running the football being balanced. Although the numbers don't reflect as far as them being successful, but he will stay at it just to keep the defense honest. I think that's one thing that will help Donovan as the season goes on. I think it was a breakout game for our freshman running back Parker Jenkins, who I'm sure we'll get into a little bit during the show. But for Donovan's perspective, I think his running ability, I think, helps settle him down, and as well as it helps settle the offense down. And I think using his running style, especially his powering running game from quarterback powers, quarterback counters, read option, and allows him and the offense to stay ahead of the chain in the distance and not have to have third and passing situation where it's obviously passing
Sure.
situation. And I think that aids Donovan. And the running game is a running back by committee. I think it will continue that way. With Parker Jenkins, I think will probably be the lead role, but whoever is having the better game, Houston primarily sticks with that guy. But as far as the passing, Dana Holgerson even said this year he has three guys where he doesn't have to move them around a lot like he did with the a la Tank Dell, where he's such a good and such a dynamic player. You want to move him around on the field just to give the defense looks. And I honestly find that matchup. I think we have that in Matthew Golden, at which he's starting to move him around a little bit more, but primarily you really have three receivers that all complement each other really well. I think Sam Brown is that prototypical big body receiver who can catch the 50-50 balls downfield, can catch it over the middle, and also can make plays after the run, yards after catch with the ball in his hands. And then I think Joseph Manjack is that possession receiver. He's going to do the dirty work. He's going to catch those outside routes, inside slants, to really just do whatever you need and can make those plays. I think Matthew Golden is that dynamic, really do-it-all receiver that at the blink of an eye, he can catch it and take it 70, 60, 80 yards. But I think they need to do a better job of catching the football and making plays for Donovan to sustain those drives. But I think you hit the nail on the head. That running game is kind of really predicated to spread the offense and for Donovan to be able to spread the ball around.
I can't get over the last name, man, Jack. Just sensational.
That's a football name.
Sensational. sensational last name right there. Like, you can't help but root for a guy with the last name Manjack. Now, except for Saturday, but that's a different story. Different story. So when you look at Texas Tech, right, like you're looking at it from the Houston point of view, what do you think Houston has to do well against what you've seen against Texas Tech? Albeit, I don't think anybody in Red Raider Nation thought Texas Tech would be in the situation they're in right now. If I would have told you they were 1-3 to begin the season, or you would have told me that, I probably would have laughed at you hysterically, because I think they're crazy enough. Call me crazy, a homer, whatever the hell you want to call me. Doesn't matter to me. I still think they're a good football team. I just think that, what is that? Regression to the mean, I guess, negative regression, positive regression can be a thing, right? And right now they've gone to the negative side of it when it comes to one-score games. So it's interesting. But from your Houston side, like you're coming into the 806, right? What stands out to you in terms of, okay, we got a game plan for that when it comes to Texas Tech?
Well, number one, I think the speed. I think the speed that you guys have on the perimeter and that fast-paced offense is something that Houston is going to have to prepare for. I think you can't really duplicate that or replicate that in practice, along with when they're on defense, the fans will kind of, I would say they'd be loud, but they won't be as loud versus when Houston has the football. So I don't think for the defense, the crowd would be as much of a factor. But offensively, the speed along with the running back, your running back is really,
Josh Brooks,
man, he's really, really good. I think he probably, in my opinion, with having a quarterback who doesn't have that much of experience, Houston probably will focus, in my opinion, should be on stopping Brooks and trying to make Texas Tech one-dimensional. Like I said, for Donovan Smith, put Texas Tech in those obvious passing situations, 3rd and long, 2nd and long, where you can allow Houston's defensive line to try to get after the quarterback. But the speed, especially when I watched that first half from Wyoming, I'm like, oh, Texas Tech has it. Of course, they always have speed and playmakers, but it really jumped out to me, and I thought they're going to really run away with this Wyoming game, in which we know how to play that. We don't have to revisit it. But the speed
I'm going to have to have a beer just remembering it,
Speed and playmaking ability with the fast pace of that offense, then with a running game like they have, is something Houston is going to keep an eye on. And then the defensive line. I mean, over these last couple of years, especially under Coach McGuire, he's really been able to retool their defensive line. And I think from the years past, you really wouldn't mention Texas Tech defense really at all. But that D-line over these last couple of years is really, I think, a force to be reckoned with. They have size, they have speed, they have strength. They really have all you need, and they can rush the passer without really having to blitz.
Yeah, no, I think that's the thing. Like, for Texas Tech, obviously you use a top 10 guy in Tyree Wilson. There's no replacing him, right? Like, that's just you can't do it. I mean, similar situation to y'all. I guess it's not even a couple years ago. It's a few years ago now with Ed Oliver, right? Like, you just don't replace guys like that, And so I think Texas Tech, they've struggled getting pressure on the edge early on. There's a guy named Steve Linton. He transferred from Syracuse, and I'll be honest, I thought he was going to be one of those guys that was top 5 at minimum in sacks in the Big 12. If you didn't know his last name was Linton and he wore number 7, you wouldn't even know he's on the field so far this season. But they do have those guys that you're talking about on the D-line, that they have the talent. And that's something that Texas Tech hasn't had in a long time. I'll also tell you this, too. I think one of the most interesting aspects in this game for me is Donovan Smith and those wide receivers against the Tech secondary. It's crazy to say this. I don't know if I've ever said this, and I've covered Texas Tech, made content about it since 2016. I could argue with you right now, the best position group on this team is the Texas Tech secondary. And it feels really weird to say, but they're old. They have a ton of experience, right? It doesn't mean that you can just be old and be a bench warmer, but they have a ton of experience.
Yeah.
They've also got some young guys, and you talk about it in the sense of they're versatile. And I want to see how they match up against those 3 wide receivers, because when I was looking at Houston, I was like, man, those wide receivers can create some issues, especially if you give Donovan Smith time, because I think people remember him last year where if he was rushed, I mean, maybe it's changed this year, but last year he was just a bad passer. If there was pressure in his face, right? Maybe it's changed a little bit this year, but if there's no pressure in Donovan Smith's face, he's pretty damn accurate, like especially downfield, right? And so that's the thing that I am most concerned about. And people have called me a broken record or whatever you want to call it this year, where basically every game I've said one of the keys to the game is Texas Tech getting the pressure on the quarterback. Like, yeah, no shit, it is. But it's really one of those things where it's like if Texas Tech doesn't do it against Donovan Smith, and Donovan Smith just has time to, sit back in the pocket, it's like, I'm just going to let, my wide receivers get open, or, oh, nobody's open, great coverage by the secondary, I'm going to run for 20 yards, right? Like, I think that's the biggest thing for this game for me is how does the Texas Tech secondary allow maybe an extra second or two for that pass rush that you're talking about? Because, looking at the Houston offensive line, it's one of those deals where it's like, I think it's solid. I don't think it's anything extraordinary. I would actually probably say from what I've seen the first 4 games, it's probably better than Texas Tech, specifically in pass protection. Texas Tech is garbage at that. I am so scared of Nelson Caesar. I am so scared of him. On Saturday, you got another one there in terms of, it seems like every damn year the Cougars have a guy that's going to go either really high in the first round that's on the defensive line, or that guy that playoff teams fall in love with in the draft process and they draft him late. Like, I forgot the guy, was it last year or the year before that everybody's like, why did they take him? And he was from Houston. He went like 29th overall. But
since Ed Oliver, they've had a D lineman taken in the draft. I mean, from Ed Oliver to Peyton Turner, and to
there we go. That's the one. Yep.
Peyton Turner with the Saints, and then we had one the year before last is with the Bucks right now. Then you had 2 last year that went undrafted, but they call themselves Sac Ave, and I mean I think that's a good assessment, because of if they aren't able to get to Donovan Smith, then from what I've seen, he is an accurate passer. And one thing that I think he's progressed from watching his games at Tech versus now, he's able to get through that first read to the second read and the third read and be calm and poised in the pocket and make an accurate throw. And so I think that's a really key for both teams. Who can pressure the quarterback to not allow them to be comfortable in the pocket? I know it's kind of cliche, but that's a really important factor, because especially how both offenses operate. Both want to get in a rhythm, up-tempo kind of, really play fast and not allow you to substitute more, and really play to their advantage and get mismatches. And so, I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. If Texas Tech, I think just like other teams that's been successful against Houston, they have to be able to make Houston one-dimensional and force Donovan Smith to beat you.
Yeah, no, and that's the scary part, because I truly think Donovan Smith can do it. Like, Donovan Smith's one of those guys, in my opinion, where, and again, not throwing shade at him, it's just hopefully he develops, because I want to see him succeed. But he's a guy that can lose you a game, or he's a guy that can like almost single-handedly win you a game. Yeah. Like there's not much in between. Yeah. And he's a guy that if you look at him over his career, that chip that he has on his shoulder has gotten him very far. I mean, he's the starting QB1 at Houston, and now he's coming back to the place that obviously Joey Maguire wanted him to stay, but it was one of those deals where it was like, we want you to stay and be the backup, right? Like, Dana wanted him to be QB1. Like, he went out and prioritized Donovan in the portal. And so I wonder what it's like for him coming back to Lubbock, a place where he graduated high school. He played a few years in college, right? In a place that they obviously respected what he was doing, right? But not enough to make him the starter because, there's Baron Morton or Tyler Shuck or whatever it may be. Obviously, it's Baron Morton now. I'm super interested to see Donovan. I think we're going to be able to tell right away what Donovan Smith we're going to get. I'm talking, first or second drive. If he looks poised in the pocket, this is going to be a very long day for Texas Tech. Very long day. But if he looks jittery and he's trying to do too much, I think the game could slip away. But again, I mean, it kind of goes down to really, I guess, just football in general, right? Whatever level you're at. If quarterback plays good, got a really good chance of winning. Play bad, probably not. It's just that simple.
And we got to keep an eye on the turnovers. Which quarterback will put the ball in harm's way, whether it be a sack fumble, whether it be an interception. I think that's important because I'm not sure. I want to get your perspective on your expectations from your quarterback. But from Donovan Smith's perspective, throughout his career at Texas Tech, and somewhat of Houston, I know he has 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but he really hasn't had that, that was a bad throw, bad interception moment, into where throughout his career, he's had turnover issues. And so, like you said, I think I agree with that assessment. I mean, he can win you a game, but he can also lose you a game. But I've seen growth from him and his ability to not put the ball in harm's way and make the right read. He had a couple throws that could have been intercepted, some off a tip pass, and so he definitely can do it. But what's your perspective from your guys' quarterback? I mean, limited time, a highly recruit. Dana said in his press conference that he's a gunslinger and he's expecting him to throw the ball all over the yard.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of Dana from Dana's point of view. I think it's going to be interesting, right? Because this is Barron's team now. Tyler Shuck's not coming back. Thoughts and prayers to him. That was a nasty injury to his fibula last weekend up in West Virginia. But this is Barron's team now. There's been some rumors that, Barron's got an AC joint injury. I think he's going to play this week. Everything I've heard, he's going to play, even Joey McGuire. Maybe it's blowing smoke. Who knows? I think when it comes down to it is this. You're going to see a drastically different Texas Tech team this week than maybe we've seen all season because it took them long enough. But I think Zach Kittley, the offensive coordinator, finally saw the light switch moment or light bulb moment or whatever that old saying is. I'm terrible with old sayings. You'll see. Maybe you already have. But no, I think that they're going to run the ball a lot, right? Like Taj Brooks is going to run the ball a lot. And the thing that Texas Tech struggles with on offense more than virtually anything except for pass blocking itself is these wide receivers. Yes, they're fast. And yes, I think they're athletic, but they get no separation. I mean, they get none. So every time Baron Morton is throwing, it's going to be into a tight window. And it doesn't matter if it's Jerron Bradley, a guy that I think could get drafted, top 3 rounds next year in the NFL draft, or we're talking about a guy in Dre McCray, who was the fastest guy in the portal this past offseason, right? Like they just don't get much separation. And so I think there's something there when you talk about which quarterback is going to put themselves in more opportunities to potentially turn the ball over. I would probably say it's Donovan for the sheer fact that from how you're talking about it and what I've looked at, Texas Tech has a more sustained run game, right? Like in terms of, hey, this is our guy. Like, yeah, you got to focus on it, but he's more proven and it's not a by a committee approach, right? So I would probably say that, but don't get it twisted in the sense that it would not shock me at all if we're talking about Baron Morton throwing 2 picks. Like it would not shock me because he is a gunslinger. He's got that Brett Favre in him where, that guy doesn't look open right now, but if I throw it hard enough, I can create the window. That's who he is. And, you live and die by it. I mean, it's his team now moving forward, but I'm very interested to see how this first start for him looks this year because last weekend, it was like, hey, you're just throwing into the fire right now. The conditions were awful. It was like 57 degrees and raining and just, it was Morgantown. It was disgusting. Sorry, Morgantown. I didn't mean that. But you know what I mean, weather-wise. But yeah, like I think it's going to be interesting. And from the standpoint of this Texas Tech side of things, I think Texas Tech, it's crazy. I think Joey McGuire now is 1-7, 1-8 on the road. They're just a drastically different home team. I mean, they should have beaten Oregon at home. Like, I don't know if you watched that game.
I watched that game.
Yeah, I was at the game, and I probably said every cuss word that, in the book towards Tyler Shuck on that last pick. I don't know if you remember it. He just kind of handed it to the guy. I was like, every cuss word I could think of. But yeah, no, I think that Texas Tech plays better at home. Case in point, they may not have won against Oregon, but they were close to a top 10 team now. I'm very interested to see kind of this split now because I think you could see a scenario with Texas Tech moving forward where we're talking about, it's Texas Tech, it's the air raid. Like they're going to throw so many times. Like it wouldn't shock me at all if it's a 60-40 type split for run to pass.
How much do they use Morton as a runner? Because they use Shuck quite a bit in the run game.
I don't think they can anymore.
Okay.
Like he'll run. Don't get me wrong. Like if he needs to, he'll run. But I don't think there's going to be, those QB powers like with Donovan last year or Tyler Shuck. It's one of those deals where it's like Barron's a sturdy built guy, right? Like he's not Tyler Shuck or Donovan though. Like let's not get it twisted. Those guys are freaks when it comes down to the quarterback position, right? Like what 6'6", 250, run like 4.5s, like freak stuff. But, Barron's solidly built dude. I think the thing that you're going to see most, and I talked about this in the previous video on the channel, is like you're going to see quick passing from Texas Tech, because with a guy like Nelson Caesar, they're going to double team him. Like, if they don't, they're not doing their jobs right, because he's that dude, right? And the Texas Tech offensive line and pass protection is arguably the worst in the Big 12. Like, I'm talking Oklahoma State bad. Like, it's bad. Now, they can run block. I don't understand it. It's like night and day almost in a way. But I think you're going to see a lot of quick passes. I think you're going to see a lot of motions with the tight end, try and get them out into the flats, use them as a lead blocker. I also think you're going to see a bunch of drags, some slants. Texas Tech will take their chances downfield for sure when they present themselves, but I think they're really going to try and get the ball out in that 2 to 3 second range, and not allow Houston to substitute, because again, and correct me if I'm wrong, they've got a couple guys on that defensive line for Houston, but it's not, 7, 8 guys deep. It doesn't look like to me. It looks more like 4 or 5, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they're dealing with some injury as well. I expect our starting Chidozie to be back inside, and so that'll add to the depth. But I think they're dealing with a little bit of injuries. But I think that's really a fair assessment. It's not like years past where you can roll out 4 in and 4 out and sustain that high level of pass rush. But I think we do have some guys that can still get to the quarterback, and so that's really a fair assessment. It's not like years past where they will roll them in and roll them out. So I think Texas Tech will use that to their advantage, try to create those mismatches in regards to getting them tired, up the tempo, and try to keep them on the field. But one of the other players who stood out, transferred from Oklahoma, David Yu. I don't want to pronounce his last name because it's really
I know who you're talking about. Yeah,
but man, that kid right there, I think he on the other side of Nelson Caesar is coming into his own and can really, really be dominant. I mean, he should play both positions in regards to linebacker, outside rushing the passer, and off the ball linebacker. But now he's primarily rushing the quarterback. And he had a really good game against Sam Houston and a really good game against TCU. And I think Houston defense really has played really well. That second half against Rice, the game against TCU, they played well enough to win. I don't think the offense played to the level they should have played at to been able to win that game again. Then against a team against Sam Houston State, I think they did what they were supposed to outside of giving up that first touchdown drive. And so I think the defense is going to be having high confidence coming into this game, and then facing a backup quarterback. I think they'll really feel like if they do what they should, get after him a little bit, maybe cause a turnover, then they can be successful. But we have to watch missed tackles from Houston. They're one of the teams that misses a lot of tackles, especially in the open field, whether it's a running back or receivers. And so I'm kind of mindful of Texas Tech creating some of those big explosive plays that they can create, whether it be from a screen, a trick play, whatever the case may be. I think Houston at times have been acceptable to those big plays, especially in the run game.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to me, because the run game is, I think, this new dimension for Texas Tech now. Like, it's always been there, don't get me wrong, but I think that they're really going to lean on it now, because Taj Brooks is on pace for like 1,250 yards. He's averaging 7 yards a carry. Like, he's a freak. Do I think he's going to sustain 7 yards a carry? No, I don't think that that's fair to think of anyone, right? But I do think when it comes down to it, he's going to be the key part of your offense now. You're going to see quite a bit of that RPO type stuff where it's really going to be typically like this with the RPO. I don't think Baron Morton's going to have the option to run. What I think is going to happen is you're going to see a tight end move in motion at first, and then you're going to have the RPO opportunity to hand it to Taj. And then Morton's going to move out to the right, have that tight end out there in the flat to dump it off to. I think that that's the kind of stuff you're going to see, because, again, they're going to get Baron Morton moving around just for the sheer fact, specifically in the pass game. Again, the Texas Tech offensive line is just it's bad on the offensive line side of things. On the odds front, do you think it was a little high when you first saw it? I don't know if you saw the updated one. It's like 9.5 for Texas Tech. Do you think that was kind of high?
I think that's fair. I think that's
really.
Fair,
I thought it was a little high.
Well, only reason I would say it might be high with the uncertainty with the quarterback. I think that potentially can make it a little high, but being at home, at home against a Houston defense who hasn't just been lights out of years past, like they have in years past, I think that's fair. And for me personally, of course I want Houston to win, but I won't believe it until I see it. Until I see us beat Texas Tech, I don't know how to feel, because you go back to the year when we had De'Aaron King and he went crazy at Texas Tech, him and Marquez Stevenson, but we still find a way to lose that game. And then
I forgot about Marquez Stevenson.
Man,
I didn't forget about De'Aaron King though. I can't forget about him.
And then you go to was it last year and the year before last in the NRG?
Yeah.
And then you go to was that last year?
Yeah, last year was in Lubbock week 2.
Okay, yeah, last year was in Lubbock, and the year before that was in the NRG. So those 3 games, Houston had a chance to win the game. In my opinion, I feel like they gave it away, but at the same time, Texas Tech kind of took it as well. And so tomato. And so I don't know what to, like I told Chaz, I was like, man, just honestly speaking, I hope we win, but I don't know what to expect because of the first road game for Donovan Smith in Houston for Houston, going to Texas Tech, and which is a lot of emotions. But I think once he gets on the field, he'll be calm. And plus, he's a mature player from what I've seen. And so I don't really know. What's your thoughts on it in the spring? You still think it's kind of high?
I did. I thought it was kind of high. I thought it would be around like 6.5.
One quick thing.
No worries. Yeah, no, I thought it was kind of high. Just for the sheer fact, again, like it's almost kind of like what you said with Houston. Texas Tech really hadn't done much this year.
Yeah.
Like, you look at it like Texas Tech, when it all comes down to it, like they blew a game at Wyoming. Should have won it. I mean, they disappeared for 45 minutes on national television. Never seen an offense do that before at Texas Tech. Against Oregon, again, it's not all Tyler Shuck who lost the game, but people are going to remember that 31-30, you had a chance to go down there and kick a field goal. He basically just hands it to the Oregon defender, right? And then last weekend was just I'm not talking myself into it this way, but I could see where it's like, okay, we just lost our leader. He just had a gruesome injury, that kind of deal. I'm almost kind of in the same vein as you, where I'm just going to believe it when I see it when Texas Tech beats Houston.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because of the hype, right? Like Texas Tech was that dark horse to win the Big 12, right? Like Joey McGuire is, the greatest thing since sliced bread. You remember the Brett Yormark comments, like, better go down there and do it again, right? Like, and again, I'm not knocking Joey McGuire. I think he is the right guy. Don't get it twisted. But
I give him the coaching edge over Holgerson.
Yeah, I think it's a coin flip, to be honest. The only reason I probably give it a slight edge, if you made me pick to Joey McGuire, it's at home. That's why. But I think for me, it's like, again, he's doing great things on the recruiting trail, but there has been times during the first 4 games where it's not just him on the coaching staff for Texas Tech. It's others as well, like Zach Kitley, where they've just been thoroughly outcoached. I mean, just thoroughly outcoached. And that's one thing that concerns me, where Dana, again, I think this is why Donovan Smith is the perfect player for Dana Holgerson, is because just like Donovan Smith is either one way or the other on the field, Dana Holgerson is the same way as a coach. Like, he is either a top 5 coach, you're like, holy crap, you are a mastermind, or you're asking yourself, who let the 7th grade play caller in the building right now? There's no in between. But it's one of those things where I'm just like, I didn't even put that 2 and 2 together until I thought about it. But that is a perfect marriage right there. But that's kind of where I'm at. And again, do I think Texas Tech is the more talented team? Yeah. The crazy part is I think Texas Tech is probably a top 6 most talented team in the Big 12. They're not that right now, but I mean, in terms of, record and everything. And I'm not going to come up here and say, they're going to go on a run in the Big 12. Listen, these first 3 weeks were your opportunity to get back on track. You laid an egg in Morgantown. You should have won that game in Morgantown, simple and plain. You better beat Houston at home, or I'm telling you right now, you're going to hear some things talked about when it comes to this program, man. They didn't put $220 million into buildings for this to happen. And then you got Baylor next weekend in Waco. So
Which
I mean,
sounds it could be a winnable game.
Yeah, but again, 1-7 on the road for Joey McGuire. Like, he just hasn't had a lot of success winning, and maybe he clears that hurdle at Baylor. Who knows? But I mean, you look at their middle of the pack schedule, right, for Texas Tech. It's weird. I don't remember the last team that had this, and it could have been this year or maybe even last year. But Texas Tech, every other week, it basically just goes road, home, road, home, road, home all season. So they don't have a homestand for a while. And so you look at the middle of your schedule, you play Kansas State in a couple weeks. Kansas State, that's a tough team right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Will Howard's healthy, I think they may be the best team in the Big 12, at least on par with Texas. And then you go to Provo. Nobody wants to play in Provo. That place is crazy. And then you come back home and you play TCU on a Thursday night, right? Like, if you don't win these two games against Houston and Baylor, we're talking about a Texas Tech team that maybe wins 3 games tops. Like, it could hit the fan. Like, and I mean, again, just perfect example is this week on the channel. Like, you can go look at the comments and people are pissed and mad and every other word you want to throw out. I have never seen people ask for basketball season so early.
Oh,
so
same
early.
Same
Yeah.
here.
Well, you guys have a good reason. Y'all could go to the Final Four. Texas Tech bubble team. That's what we're hoping for this year. In year 1 of Grant McCaslin. A little different with a GOAT on the sideline for you guys. Even though you got to replace Sasser, right?
Yep, Marcus Sasser.
Yeah, he ended up in Detroit. Correct?
Yep.
There we go.
Detroit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. Gosh.
I see a comment on the chat where they asked, have we placed Alton McCaskill? And it's been a running back by committee. I think last week we had our freshman running back who was a 4-star recruit, a track guy running 10-2 in 100 meters. But
you said a what?
A 10-2 in 100. And he's
okay.
I think he's electric. He's more than a track guy, but when he has the ball, you can see he has that it factor. When some guys have, you can kind of see like, oh, he's one step away from taking it to the house. And so he had a coming out party, 3 touchdowns, over 100 yards, 18 carries, but that's against Sam Houston State. And Houston has struggled to run the football throughout every other game outside of against Sam Houston State. So in our post-game show at Let's Raise Cougs, that was one of the questions. Yeah, you did against Sam Houston State, but can you do this against a Big 12 opponent? And so although I feel like we have replaced Alton McCaskill, and it's a running back by committee, it's not just Parker Jenkins. We still have Brandon Campbell. We had Tony Jones to come over from West Virginia. And we also have Stacy Sneed, who is more of a speed elusive back who can catch the ball out of a backfield. So they all have different skill sets, but they all are very, very usable and durable and can get the job done. So it's really about which running back has the hot hand and is playing well. But for me, it's even before that. Can the offensive line create space for the running backs to run? And they had an offensive line coach who came over from Tulane, Coach Nagavi, who is their running game coordinator, was supposed to change some things up. But so far, it's to no avail. It hasn't really been successful. It hasn't been sustainable for them to be able to lean on. And so I wonder, can they get that going against Texas Tech? I'm not going to lean my hat on and say that they will be, because Texas Tech has a really good size on the defensive line and offensive line. And like you said, they have speed and experience in the perimeter and in their back seven.
Yeah, I think Tajay Spear hides a lot of flaws when you're a run game coordinator at Tulane. You know what I mean? Like, Tajay Spears is pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good. You know? I don't know. Just my opinion. Maybe people can call me out if they want. I don't care. Let's jump into predictions, though, because I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight. Again, Texas Tech kind of depends on where you're looking, right? Caesars, DraftKings, whatever sports book you go to. It ranges from about 8.5 to 10 when it comes down to it. And the spread, the total, pretty consistent, 50.5, 51.5. I want to get your perspective on this. What is the one thing Houston has to do to beat Texas Tech in Lubbock on Saturday?
One thing. I almost want to say win a turnover battle, but if they won a turnover battle, they haven't been able to cash those into touchdowns. So it's a difference between getting turnovers and cashing them in
No doubt.
touchdowns. So I don't want to pick that. I will say stopping Texas Tech run game. That's the one thing that they have to do. If they can stop Texas Tech run game, force them into obvious passing situations, and forcing them into putting the ball in the air, which will enable Houston's um, pass rush to get to the quarterback and enable their secondary, who has been able to cause turnovers and catch interceptions. So they both go hand in hand. I think the D line works hand in hand with the secondary, and they both coincide well. And so if they can stop the run, force Tech in those third and second and passing long situations, and whether they create a turnover or not, I think it will bode well for the defense, and they can be able to kind of not blitz as much, play 8 in coverage, and only rush 4.
I like it. Yeah, no, I think that's if y'all can get to Baron Morton with 3, congratulations. Y'all probably win this game. It's that simple, like in my opinion. And it's not impossible, if that makes sense, from what we've seen from the Texas Tech offensive line and pass protection specifically. It's not impossible. Before I give mine, everybody let us know in the chat your score prediction for Houston at Texas Tech. I'll have mine here in a little bit, and I feel 0% confident about it. When it comes to Texas Tech, and the one thing that they have to do to beat Houston, it is 100% get to Donovan Smith. And I don't mean you have to touch him. I don't mean you have to sack him. What I mean is you have to make him know you're there. And Texas Tech has not done that to any quarterback so far this year outside of Tarleton State. And to be honest with you, I don't give a damn. It's Tarleton State, right? So it's like, okay, and I don't need sacks. I just need pressure on the quarterback. That's all you need. And I think when you look at what Texas Tech has, they have those guys that can do it, right? You've got arguably the best 2 defensive linemen in terms of the duo in the Big 12, right? And Jalen Hutchings and Tony Bradford. Maybe, Texas or Oklahoma has a better one, but they're definitely top 3, right? You got a guy in Miles Cole that is a freak on the outside. And then you've also got Steve Linton, who I don't know what happened. I don't know if maybe the preseason injury he had is just lingering and he doesn't have his get off or whatnot, but he has disappeared. And so I think what I mean is you have to keep Donovan with the pressure in his face. If he gets outside of the pocket, it's donezo, right? Like it's donezo, in my opinion, in the sense of he's going to outrun a linebacker. And by the time somebody in the secondary gets to him, he's already 10 yards down the field. So really what I mean is you got to keep that pressure.
Fall forward. He's going to fall forward.
Yeah, no, that's the problem too, is who says that the guy in the secondary is going to be able to tackle him? Yeah. We're talking about literally a column with legs. Like this man is a behemoth, right? And so, I mean, Texas Tech knows that, but still, it's one of those deals for me where if the Texas Tech defensive line does not get pressure, sacks would be great, but just get pressure in Donovan's face to make him actually make a decision fast, they win the game. And I think it's with relative ease. Now, the problem is they literally haven't done it at all this year. Like, I mean, they haven't done that at all. So let's jump into score predictions here. Again, we got 8.5, 10-point spread, 50.5, 51-point over-under. What is your score prediction for Saturday at Jones AT&T Stadium for the Big 12 home opener for Texas Tech? It's the first away game of the year for Houston in the Big 12, and the return of Donovan Smith out to West Texas.
If Texas Tech wins, then I think that margin will hold true. If they win, I think the score would be 38-28. If Houston is to win, I think it'll be a closer game, and Houston will win 31-28 with a go-ahead field goal at the end. And so those are my 2 scores. Like I said a second ago, if you guys are just joining, I won't believe it until I see it with my eyes. Houston beats Texas Tech. I'm not like I talked trash last year because I was excited. I thought we had the team, we had the playmakers.
You should have won.
Should have won, but they
I was at the game. Shout out to Donovan Smith for that one.
And the defense. They definitely just fourth. I don't want to talk about it.
That's fair. That's fair. Which one are you going with, though? Are you picking Tech or are you picking Houston.
I'm gonna go with my heart, and I'm gonna say
I love
Donovan
it.
Smith and Houston. Donovan Smith game-winning drive to get Houston in field goal position, and they kick a field goal to win it, 31-28.
The ultimate revenge narrative. You love to see it. You'll love to see it. I think Texas Tech does win this one. I think this is a get right game for Texas Tech at home. And again, I would not be picking Texas Tech if this game was in Houston. I just wouldn't. I think Texas Tech wins like 34-21. I think the defense actually shows up. I think they get pressure to Donovan Smith, and I think he probably turns the ball over 2-3 times. But again, we're going to tell what Donovan Smith is there. And personally, I do think that Donovan Smith will come out and he will have a drive where I'm just like, that's my guy. You know what I mean? Like, in just terms of like living up to it. It's so hard for me to root against Donovan.
How much of the fan base misses Donovan? Because Chaz doesn't have anything bad to say about Donovan when we talk about him. And he gave you guys, well, he helped you guys win two of the biggest games last year against Texas and against OU. And so, like, how much of the fan base is going to, I mean, I know they're going to boo him, obviously, because he's an op now. But, like, how much of the fan base, like, misses him and what he brought to the program? Especially in the, now that Tyler Shook has been injury prone throughout his career, as he sustained another injury.
Man, I'm telling you, I truly believe there's no in between, right? Like, you either love this guy like I do, where I'm like, I love Donovan Smith. All I want to do is I just want to see the guy succeed, right? Mm-hmm. Except for Saturday, right? Every other game, go ahead. But I feel like if you had to ask me, like, hey, percentage-wise, right? Because, again, there's no in between. It's either you love them or you hate them, right? Mm-hmm. I would probably say, and again, maybe I just don't have the pulse or my fingers on the pulse like I used to kind of deal. But I would probably say it's like 60-40. They're happy that he's gone for the sheer fact of this. Baron Morton gets to play now. And Baron Morton he's the darling child, right? Like he was born into a Red Raider household. He was the prodigal son. He's the highest rated player ever to commit to Tech. Well, not commit anymore. Shout out to Micah Hudson. But actually go to Texas Tech, right? So like there's some bias there in that regard. But I think when it comes down to it, if you asked every Red Raider, like, hey, do you want to see Donovan Smith succeed? I think they give you the same answer I just did in terms of yes, except for this Saturday. But some are more happy than others that he's gone for the sheer fact of there isn't that debate anymore about who QB2 is now QB1. Because if Donovan was here, I guarantee you we'd be having the conversation at Texas Tech this week. Who the hell's starting against Houston? Mm-hmm. Like we would have that. But there's nothing like that anymore. It's Barron's team. It's going to be Barron's team for this year, probably next year, and we'll see how it goes from there after Will Hammond comes in and everything like that. And maybe Micah Hudson spices some things up as well. It's nice to get 5-star players. I know y'all know how that is. It's nice, man. It's nice. It's not done yet. They got to sign the paper, but can you believe that the NCAA still uses a fax machine?
That's crazy.
What are we doing? It's 2023. Like, come on now. We got to be better as people. We got to be better as people in NCAA. All right. Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on, man, spending some of your Thursday night. I got to go cook dinner before I watch, hopefully, Sam Laporta score a couple touchdowns for my fantasy team. Don't know about you, but tell the people one more time where they can find you individually and where they can find the great work y'all are doing over there on the post-game shows and the podcast in general.
You can find me on all social media platforms at Dayon Dunlap, like it shows on the screen. Be sure to follow and subscribe to our YouTube and our social media accounts. That's Pawd Slama Jama, PAWD SLAMA JAMA. Subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on social media on X, formerly known as Twitter, and also check out our post-game show immediately following the Texas Tech game. And so if you guys win or lose, if you want to come on and join us, we'll definitely send you the invitation. You can come on and join us post-game show, whether it's for the quick minute or two, give your perspective. Your thoughts on the game, we'll definitely send you that. I'll send you that link, RC. But thank you for having me on. And got to give a shout out to Coach Juice for Texas Tech, man.
Another connection.
My frat brother, Coach Juice, is a great man. Justin Johnson, shout out to Coach Juice. I hope that you guys don't have success this weekend, but I love everything about you, Coach Juice, continue to achieve.
That's how it should be.
Yeah.
You can hate us for that 4-hour stretch. We're friends afterwards.
Do you
Unless
guys
you're
consider Houston a rival or what?
No, I don't. No,
Okay.
I don't.
I agree. Until we beat y'all, we can't say this a rival because it's just lopsided right now.
No, it's kind of like on football, we've dominated y'all, and I fully expect y'all to dominate us on the hardwood. I fully expect it. And then track and field, we kind of go into Houston and take all those guys. So it's not really fair in that regard. But there is a lot of history when it comes to Texas Tech track and field. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider it a rival. Who do you, before we get out of here, who do you think is your rival in the Big 12?
Man, I think a lot of
Or do you have one?
I mean, I think a lot of Houston fans view Tech as a rival just because of our recent history. They're one of the schools that we've played recently and routinely. So I think there's a little bit of rivalry there. TCU, I wouldn't say so much. I think Baylor would probably be a rival, especially in basketball. But football, I think there'll be a bit of a rivalry there. And so I would probably go with Tech and Baylor.
Okay. I mean,
just from the fans' perspective.
Yeah, there's no shame being a basketball school, though. I'm just saying. Hey, I'm about it, especially when you're good like you guys are. Trust me, we were too, where we were like, hey, an Elite Eight, Final Four, back-to-back years, we'll be a basketball school. That's cool with us. We don't care. Yeah, but awesome, man. I appreciate you hopping on. I put the link in there. I'm going to add another thing to the chat to make sure they know what it is, but put the link to the podcast in there. I'll put your link in there too, so they can go follow you on Twitter down in the comments. Once again, appreciate you hopping on with me, and I hope for the worst luck on Saturday afternoon to you guys.
All right, man. Appreciate it, RC. I'll send you the link just in case if you got 2 or 3 minutes after the game you want to join the show, we'll definitely welcome you. Even
absolutely,
we'll welcome you.
Also, tell Chaz to fix his freaking AirPods, bro. Like, god damn, be better. Be better, man. Yes, please. Like, talk all the trash to that man.
Okay.
Talk all of it. But also, I hope he's doing really, really well. Send him that as well.
For sure.
There we go. I appreciate you, man. Thank you again for copping on. I'm going to wrap it up there in terms of the stream as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and like the video as well. Hey, again, hopefully on Saturday afternoon, it's a win for the Red Raiders. But I know somebody on this stream right now that would be happy if it went the other way. I'm RC. He's Dayon. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.